last time. Around your merry-go, merry-go-round.
Welcome to the wonderful world of the Content Carnival game. Yeah, that's right, folks. Just step this way. You're about to witness the most amazing, the most astounding, the most adventurous carnival game of all. Friends and content practitioners, you and your colleagues will never see games so challenging and yet so rewarding. You might try and have your luck at the Content Duck Hunt, where you have to watch and edit through all the onslaught of the kinds of content that cross your desk to find the only content golden duck with a prize. You won't know which is the golden piece of content until you spend tons of time, but don't spend too much time or you'll miss out as it floats right on by. Or you might, folks, try the bottle ring content game, where you throw all your content rings at different channels, trying to get one of them to fit and actually resonate with your audience. That content, it's just like a wooden ring. It never bounces right, it never seems to land where you need it to, but if you can somehow get it to land on a bottle, then you win a prize. Or perhaps you'd like to play the most famous of all content creation games, and that's Content Whack-A-Mole, where you constantly have to decide which content to execute based on the speedy little moles that issue requests. Is your email box filling up? Is your calendar more of a to-do list than a calendar? Well, that's the game, folks. Whack all those moles and you just might have yourself a content strategy. And that is the Content Carnival. It can seem like a never-ending ride that we can't get off, making us feel dizzy and unable to get ahead of anything. So how do we get off this ride? How can we actually instill real planning and real strategy behind our content creation process? Well, let's dig in. Let's talk about the actual content creation planning and workflow and how we're probably missing only one key ingredient to win every Content Carnival game. A great content creation strategy is just like a carnival game. You can win it, it's just never as easy as it looks.
Won't hear a sound at all as I bury you 6 feet underground.
Welcome to episode 12 of Marketing Makers, the series for those that make marketing work. I'm Robert Rose, and I'm your host. And whether you're an independent consultant, a director at a Fortune 100, a newly appointed CMO, we are all marketing makers. And this month, we're talking about content creation, planning, and workflow. So let's get to the bottom of why plans are useless, but planning might just be the most valuable thing we can do, and really develop a much smarter and better framework for creating content. Welcome to Marketing Makers. Oh, hi. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Marketing Makers Lab. I'm, as you can see here, just trying to practice a little juggling. Now, because I can edit this show, well, I can make myself look very talented at this. But believe me, I am not talented at this. But here's the thing. I'm not planning on becoming a juggler, or quite frankly, spending any time trying to create any space in my life to become a juggler. So it's okay. I've decided that juggling is something I don't want to do. Now, ultimately, my career may suffer for it, and it may not be the wisest decision. I'm thinking I'm pretty safe at this point, but that was the decision I made some time ago. You see, here's a funny thing about planning. We humans have this funny way of doing this activity sometimes. When thinking about how we're going to allocate our time, our resources, we like to categorize things. In our own life, it might be work, lifestyle, family. In our business, it might be new products, new revenue versus new costs, employees, risks, opportunities. Or in business strategy, our yearly planning process, well, we might look at it via divisions, marketing, sales, product, human resources, accounting, all of those kinds of things put together. And what do we do to make that plan? Well, what we typically do is we take up all the decisions that we've made in the prior months leading up to this planning process, and then we rigorously analyze them to break them down into tasks so that we can achieve them all. The challenge comes when we try to juggle all of them. We can't. The decisions that were made here, well, they don't fit the plan over there. And the plan there doesn't really fit the critical and strategic decision that was made over here. Put simply, there's a reason that there's this famous quote, usually attributed to Dwight Eisenhower, that says, "Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." You see, it is understanding the difference between those two things that's key. The valuable outcome from planning is not a plan. No. The valuable outcome from planning are the decisions about what will need to be accomplished, and most importantly, what will not need to be accomplished because we're not going to do it. Now, from a content creation perspective, this really couldn't be more of an important lesson to us, because in business today, one of the things that we hear most often in our consulting practice is content teams, we are overloaded. We're so busy creating content that we have no time to think about being proactive or strategic. We've quite literally become, as I've been quoted before saying, on-demand vending machines of content. If our content calendar is simply a production to-do list of all the assets that we've been asked to create, well, we're suffering from a plan with no planning. If by the time our content assets are finished being created, they're already late, well, then we're suffering from a plan with no planning. If we find ourselves repeating ourselves over and over and over again and seemingly creating the same content over and over again, well, it's just easier sometimes to create content than it is to go find the old version of what we previously created. If we're doing that, then we're suffering from a plan with no planning. This mistake we see in content planning is one that we find very common in today's business. And there are two main culprits for it that we find. The first is that we start conflating this idea of content with finished assets. They're different. In other words, we mistake content we are making or creating or writing for the container in which it sits. And we only create plans for containers, not content. Put simply, our calendar is filled with the production of assets like PDFs and images and posts and white papers and blogs and ads, instead of the content that's ready to be put into that production. The second culprit is more related to what I just talked about with the challenge that we have with the concept of strategic planning altogether. Our immediate tendency with content creation planning is to put together a process by which we attempt to address all of the requests, the desires, the dreams, the wishes, etc., from all parts of the organization. In other words, no one asks what content should be produced, but instead asks, how are we going to produce all of it? Well, content creation planning and content creation teams become simply short order cooks in that situation. And we're trying to combine the meals in the most efficient and possible way. And no one ever asks, well, should that meal even be on the menu in the first place? You see, part of a content creation planning process must include the decisions on what will and what, most importantly, won't be created from a content perspective. So how do we get out of this? How do we get to a content creation planning that can actually help the business and the team get off the whack-a-mole, hunt the duck, and other carnival game circuit and into a content creation workflow that actually makes sense? Interestingly enough, it all comes down to changing the way we work with our ideas. In other words, let's stop making plans and start making decisions as part of a planning process.
Put the pain and the hurting. I won't do it, I'm told. I've spent too long trying to win your little.
We'd like to thank ContentCal.com as this month's sponsor of Marketing Makers. ContentCal.com is an all-in-one content and social media marketing platform where you can plan, create, publish, and collaborate on all of your content. ContentCal.com also has inbuilt analytics so you can see how you compare against your competitors and identify your top performing posts. It is the inbuilt customizable workflow and planning channels that really make ContentCal.com stand out from other social media and content platforms. You can invite anyone in your business to view and get feedback on the content before it gets published, as well as setting specific approvers on how to get the final say on what actually goes live. Why don't you start your free trial by heading over to ContentCal.com.